A hunter-gatherer group didn't just need to remember where to find food. They also had to keep track of routes back to water sources, seasonal cycles, how to distinguish their group's tools from others, and memorize survival sequences, knowledge that spoken words could easily lose over a few generations. Tens of thousands of years ago, their lives were constantly pressured by the need to store vital information. Information the human brain simply couldn't hold entirely on its own. They lived in a world without writing, no calendars to track time, no maps of the land, and no records of any kind to store their hunting or gathering experiences. Despite this lack of recording tools, the sheer volume of life or death information they had to manage was incredibly vast. They needed to recall precisely when seasons changed, to predict when animal herds would return to the grasslands, or when specific wild fruits were ready for harvest. Getting it wrong could mean starvation for the entire group. They also needed to remember a complex web of routes across varied landscapes to find those precious freshwater sources, especially during harsh dry seasons when life and death could hang on a single water hole. Their communal existence also required them to mark and clearly distinguish their own tools and weapons from fellow members, or even from competing groups. A well-made spear, for instance, was a valuable possession. Identifying it was absolutely crucial. Keeping complex techniques alive demanded ancient people remember exact numbers, specific sequences of steps for crafting a tool, or the count of prey taken. While spoken words could convey all this information directly from person to person, sound itself, once uttered, vanishes immediately. Human memory isn't perfect, and oral traditions easily fragment or shift over generations. This very vulnerability of speech led to a major archaeological discovery. At many sites around the world, archaeologists have found very unusual marks on stone, on bone, and on ivory. Rather than illustrating a daily scene, ancient people engraved the material with parallel lines, cross marks, grid patterns, zigzags, deep dots, or a series of repeating symbols. These prehistoric geometric engravings raise a central question for cognitive archaeology. Why did ancient people invest so much effort to create patterns that seem to depict nothing they saw directly in the natural world? Painting an animal on a rock face. It was a great, intuitive way for others in the group to instantly recognize the creature. An image of a bison with its curved horns and that distinctive hump needed no explanation. It was a direct copy, a simulation of physical reality. But when a group's need for information moved beyond simple identification to recording events, numbers, or time cycles, then pictorial representations, they started to show serious weaknesses and inconvenience. Imagine an Ice Age hunter. He didn't just need to tell his group about a herd of deer. He also needed to record how many times he'd seen them in a season, or the moon cycles between their migrations through a valley. Maybe even mark this territory as his group's own. Drawing a deer over and over for every sighting, that would be extremely time-consuming and inefficient. The information to convey here wasn't "this is a deer," it was 7 times, or after 3 lunar cycles. Detailed pictures became redundant and cumbersome. Right at this limit of mimetic imagery, simple geometric signs, straight lines, dots, parallel grooves, or grid patterns, they began to show a superior advantage, both in execution and in cognition. Prehistoric geometric markings. They had a core characteristic. They were incredibly easy to make, with the simplest tools. A sharp flint shard dragged across a piece of bone, a finger tracing on damp clay inside a cave wall. All could create a clear mark. It didn't require advanced artistic skill or lengthy carving time on hard surfaces like stone or ivory. That's why they were so easy to repeat, at high speed. This allowed their creators to quickly record a lot of data, equivalent to counting or marking rhythm. 10 simple tally marks. They conveyed the information, the number 10, far more effectively than drawing 10 animals. With their minimalistic structure, tally marks and dots, they were very easy for the human visual system to recognize and distinguish. The brain's pattern recognition ability is optimized for simple, high-contrast forms. In the low light of a cave, illuminated by a flickering torch, a series of parallel lines, or a cluster of dots, they would stand out and be much easier to read than a complex drawing with many details and shades. Even if the material wore down over time, partially, the basic structure of a geometric sign could still be identified. Their flexibility also allowed them to be carved onto almost any available surface, from bone tools, small portable stone slabs, ostrich eggshell fragments used as water containers, to the exquisite Swabian Jura artifacts, or on vast cave walls like those found at La Roche-Cotard Cave. This widespread use, it shows they were an extremely effective and adaptable memory solution, a significant step before the development of writing. This confirms a core principle in cognitive archaeology. While mimetic drawings retained the physical form of the real world, the geometric signs made by ancient people, they had the power to retain abstract relationships, quantities, time rhythms, or tacit conventions, understood only by those within the same community. They weren't photographs of the world. Instead, they were a tool to encode facts about that world. For a long time, archaeology largely assumed that the ability to make deliberate geometric marks was something unique to us, to modern humans, Homo sapiens. This idea was deeply held, that only we had the abstract thought to transform a simple line or a dot into a meaningful symbol. But now, new evidence has emerged. From the La Roche-Cotard Cave, tucked away in France's Loire Valley, comes physical proof that completely challenges this old belief. These discoveries, detailed in the scientific journal PLOS One in 2023, are forcing us to rethink a crucial part of the story of human cognition. Deep inside La Roche-Cotard Cave, investigators uncovered distinct geometric markings. These weren't animal drawings or hunting scenes found so often elsewhere. Instead, etched into a soft, sediment-rich cave wall were combinations of parallel lines, series of dots, and, most uniquely, marks made by fingers pressed and drawn across the surface. Experts call this finger fluting. Careful study of these traces revealed they were made with purpose, methodically. There was no random scratching here, no evidence of a bear's claw or any other animal seeking shelter. The patterns, how they repeated, how they were placed across the wall, all of it pointed to a deliberate, controlled act, a physical effort to leave a specific, tangible mark on the world. The most crucial part of this discovery, the real breakthrough, lies in the dating. Scientists used a technique known as optically stimulated luminescence dating. We call it OSL. This method essentially measures the very last time sediment particles in the rock were exposed to sunlight. The analysis was precise. It revealed that the entrance to La Roche-Cotard cave was completely sealed by earth and stone over 57,000 years ago, with a margin of error of about 3,000 years. Now, this detail is absolutely vital. All the archaeological and genetic evidence we have tells us that this sealing happened long before the first modern humans, Homo sapiens, ever set foot in this region of Europe. The logical conclusion from this dating is undeniable. These markings could only have been made by Neanderthals. They were the only human species living in this region at that time. This finding at La Roche-Cotard isn't just an interesting ancient object. It's a seismic shift for long-held ideas of early human thought. It forces scientists to ask profound new questions. If Neanderthals also made geometric marks in prehistory, what did they mean? What purpose did they serve in their society? Were they a way to mark territory, a memory aid, or some form of expression that, for now, we simply cannot yet understand? Now, when we discuss these findings, the language we use must be very precise. It would be a mistake to quickly label them as Neanderthal art. Our own idea of art today is loaded with assumptions about beauty, symbolism, and communication. A more scientific way to put it is that these are clearly deliberate physical marks. What their exact social purpose was, or the specific cognitive ability that drove them, these questions still require much care to answer. We need more comparative evidence from other sites. But La Roche-Cotard is vital here. It demonstrates that the urge to leave behind non-representational patterns is a deeply embedded cognitive reflex. Perhaps it arose from the very basic human need to interact with the physical world around us, and not just something unique to the Homo sapiens line. It shows that the act of creating a sign, any sign, was a foundational step in cognitive evolution, a step that both we and our long-lost cousins, the Neanderthals, clearly made. To truly understand how these marks functioned, modern archaeology no longer just examines individual artifacts. Instead, it's starting to apply data science, analyzing vast numbers of traces across wide areas. This approach allows us to move beyond individual guesses. We can now search for verifiable statistical patterns, a significant step forward in cognitive archaeology. We no longer ask what one single mark means. Instead, we ask why a sequence of marks repeats in a specific order, appearing on dozens of different tools. A prime example of this new method comes from a study in PNAS by scientists Christian Bentz and Eva Dudkevsky. They statistically analyzed a collection of artifacts roughly 40,000 years old from the Swabian Jura region in southwestern Germany. The Swabian Jura artifact assemblage, including fragments of mammoth ivory, reindeer bone, and stone plaques, bears countless intentionally incised marks left by ancient humans. Instead of trying to decipher the symbolic meaning of each prehistoric geometric incision, this research focused entirely on how these marks repeated and combined into structured sequences. This represents a fundamental shift in scientific questioning. It didn't stop at observing a line that looked like a symbol. Instead, it directly counted which marks repeated most often, on which types of materials, and in what positions on the tools. The researchers employed computer algorithms to sift through this massive data set, searching for hidden patterns. The algorithms analyzed which marks frequently appeared together, their relative positions, and whether their sequence followed any statistical rules. For instance, did a dot have a higher probability of appearing next to a cross, a diagonal line, compared to appearing next to a triangle? Did a sequence of 3 straight lines always appear on a tool's handle, while a sequence of dots might only be found on the blade? This sequence analysis also aimed to clearly distinguish between random decorative groupings, perhaps inspired by the artisan, and a carefully calculated system designed to convey quantitative or identificatory information. This is especially crucial when studying pre-writing development, where the line between art and data remains very fine. Evidence from the Swabian Jura shows that combinations of cross marks, diagonal incisions, and dots were far from chaotic. They revealed intentional arrangements, a deliberate spatial organization on the surfaces of bone and stone. Statistical analyses indicated that certain symbol sequences repeated at frequencies far exceeding random chance. Our brains are naturally evolved to recognize patterns, but science demands evidence beyond mere intuition. This method provides precisely that evidence, quantifying patterns that the unaided eye might miss or misinterpret. The scientific crux here is this. A single cut mark on a piece of bone could easily be a simple, meaningless decorative pattern, or perhaps just a slip of a knife during butchering. It carries little informational weight. But when an identical sequence of marks, say line, dot, is found repeating systematically across dozens of different artifacts within the same cultural layer, then they officially step out of the realm of randomness. They are no longer mere decoration. They become primal informational data, a cognitive tool created to store, identify, or count. This marks a turning point in human abstract thought. When we look at these deeply structured patterns of marks, it's very tempting to immediately call them humanity's first writing. This appeal is understandable. The brain is naturally wired to seek patterns and meaning. But cognitive archaeology, if it's to remain rigorous, requires us to draw a very strict line. Acknowledging that prehistoric geometric marks might contain information is one thing, but claiming they are writing? That's an unsupported leap. Science must stick to definitions and physical evidence, not speculation. To be defined as writing, a system needs far more stable and complex social conventions. Most importantly, it must be able to record the sounds of spoken language, allowing a symbol to represent a syllable or a phoneme. This leap from depicting an idea, a bison drawing meaning bison, to depicting a sound, a mark for the sound B, that's the true essence of text. This allows for recording specific names of people, inventories of goods, trade agreements, or powerful administrative systems. The ancient marks offer no evidence they reached this level of connection to spoken language. When it comes to Paleolithic carvings and dots, like those on artifacts from the Swabian Jura, we're looking at a collection of encoded information, but it completely lacks a decipherable context. We cannot determine who actually read and understood these marks. Were they a hunter's personal code, a shaman's secret symbols, or widely understood community marks to track the seasons? We only have fragments, no complete picture to compare them against. This leaves any hypothesis about the reader as untestable speculation. Scientists also have no way of knowing how these marks were sounded out, nor can we precisely say what a specific crosshatch meant in ancient vocabulary. A single dot could mean one day, one lunar cycle, one person, or simply be a visual accent. This fundamental ambiguity is an insurmountable barrier. Without a reference text, a kind of Paleolithic Rosetta Stone, all attempts at phonetic decipherment reach a dead end. The big question remains, are these traces, for instance in La Roche-Cotard cave, recording a linguistic syllable, a mechanical count, a tribal symbol, or merely a visually appealing pattern repeated out of habit, driven by the brain's pattern recognition mechanisms? The fact that ancient people could think structurally does not automatically mean they invented a complete writing system. A system of deliberately carved marks with clear purpose still only functions as a pre-writing mnemonic tool. Its function is to trigger existing memories, not to independently convey new information. Therefore, it's a cognitive tool, an essential stepping stone in the development before true writing. But it's not a linguistic written document. Let's set aside any grand ideas about communicating with spirits or archiving universal philosophies. The purpose of these geometric marks really needs to be understood through the most practical needs of hunter-gatherer life. Cognitive archaeology asks us to look at these prehistoric carvings as actual tools, as concrete solutions for specific cognitive problems. This was a world, after all, without paper or pens. Survival, back then, wasn't just about brute strength. It also depended heavily on memory, on foresight, and on organizing daily life. One of the most likely and widespread uses for parallel lines was simply a counting system. Picture a group of hunters, perhaps, leaving their camp for days. Human memory, as we know, can easily fail, especially when people are tired and under stress. Carving just one simple line onto a bone fragment or a piece of ivory for each animal they brought down, that was an unmistakable way to keep track. It helped them accurately record their catch, estimate the amount of food they had, and plan how to share it with the rest of the group. More importantly, it created a physical record, undeniable proof of a successful hunt. Other sequences of marks, sometimes grouped or with breaks, might have served as an early form of astronomical calendar. For people whose survival depended completely on nature, keeping track of time was absolutely essential. A sequence of, say, 29 or 30 carved marks could match the phases of the moon. This would help them record the passage of weeks and months. And that, in turn, allowed them to predict seasonal shifts. When the salmon would run upstream, for example, or when the great reindeer herds would begin their annual migration. This wasn't abstract astronomy at all. It was a vital, practical forecasting tool. It helped them simply be in the right place at the right moment to secure their next meal. Then, as tools grew more important and became more finely crafted, the need for personal ownership arose. Carving lattice patterns or zigzags, or even just unique designs onto a bone spear shaft or a flint knife. This might have been an early way to mark them. During group hunts or when a large animal was being butchered, tools could easily get lost or picked up by someone else. A distinct mark helped each person quickly identify their own gear. It ensured they were always using the weapon they knew best. A small detail, perhaps, but one that could decide the success or failure of an entire hunt. On an even broader scale, those repeating geometric patterns might have acted as early identifiers for entire groups. Think of the artifacts found in Germany's Swabian Jura region, for instance. They show the recurrence of certain motifs. This was an early visual language, a way to tell allies from strangers. If two hunter-gatherer groups met unexpectedly in a rich hunting ground, similar markings on their jewelry, their weapons, or their personal items could instantly signal kinship. It could reduce conflict, leading to cooperation instead. This was, in essence, the very first step in using symbols to build a social identity. And inside the dark, often disorienting spaces of deep caves, geometric marks served a different purpose, marking space itself. Placing colored dots or carved grooves at very specific spots. This could have guided people, marking a crucial turn, or even an exit. Some researchers even suggest these marks were deliberately placed in locations with unique acoustic properties, perhaps for ritual activities, where sound would have been absolutely central. And we shouldn't forget the physical, motor aspect either. The repetitive act of carving simple, straight, or diagonal lines. This might have been a way to practice hand dexterity. For apprentices, perhaps, it was a training ground for muscle control and hand-eye coordination, all before they tackled more elaborate flint tools or more complex carvings. Beyond that, sequences of marks could also function as a mechanical memory aid, helping them recall the complex steps for starting a fire, for example, or the process of preparing tree resin as an adhesive, or even the stages of an important ritual. What's crucial to understand is that all these practical possibilities weren't mutually exclusive. A geometric mark carved onto a deer antler knife handle, for instance, could easily do several things at once. It could increase grip friction, act as an ownership mark, and be a tally of successful uses. This multifunctionality truly reflects the efficiency of prehistoric thinking. In that world, a single action often had to serve many survival purposes all at the same time. To understand why ancient human signs are so widespread, we can't just look at culture. We need to dive into the cognitive biology of the human brain itself, how it evolved. Cognitive archaeology offers answers here, grounded in biological evidence. The human visual cortex, the part of our brain that handles what we see, was honed over millions of years. It became highly efficient at detecting and processing regular patterns. This was a vital survival skill. Imagine needing to spot the telltale straight line of a predator's back hidden in dense bushes, or distinguishing the texture of an edible plant from a toxic one. Both relied on this pattern recognition. It's a deep-seated mechanism, almost automatic. Because of this inherent biological setup, our brains process and react powerfully to certain visual forms. Think of repeating lines, symmetrical shapes, marks grouped in order, or rhythmic visual sequences. Our nervous system prioritizes all of these. This isn't just about what looks good. It's a bias deeply rooted in natural selection. The brain immediately spots the difference: a straight, deliberate line versus a random curve left by flowing water. It quickly distinguishes between a purposeful cluster of dots and the natural speckles on a stone. This distinction between an intentional signal and random noise was vital survival information. When we think about learning and communication, these prehistoric geometric engravings offered a clear cognitive advantage. They needed very little working memory. People could easily observe, remember, and, crucially, copy them. Imagine a young person in the group. They could easily watch, recall, and then carve 3 parallel lines onto a piece of bone. This didn't demand the advanced, complex hand-eye coordination needed to meticulously copy, say, a cave painting of wild horses. No, just creating a line or a dot was a simple physical act, repeatable with great accuracy. The very foundations of pre-writing systems relied on this principle of mental efficiency. And it's precisely this visual simplicity in these signs that ensured their survival. They could be accurately passed down through countless generations. Think about it. A complex visual message would get altered and distorted after just a few copies, much like the telephone game in oral storytelling. But a pattern of 5 dots or a simple zigzag, almost impossible to miscopy. This simplicity created a timeless cultural stability, allowing these symbolic conventions to last for thousands of years. This biological underpinning helps us understand why we see the same types of lines, grid patterns, or dot clusters appearing independently among ancient human groups. Groups separated by vast geographic distances. From the La Roche-Cotard cave in France to the artifacts of the Swabian Jura in Germany. They weren't necessarily sharing spiritual beliefs or engaged in widespread cultural exchange. Instead, the more compelling explanation is a shared visual nervous system, a system evolved to favor and reproduce the simplest, most efficient, and most memorable patterns. From fingerprints in La Roche-Cotard cave to artifacts from the Swabian Jura, the evidence isn't pushing for a single conclusion, that prehistoric people invented writing. Instead, these archaeological findings reveal a much broader story, a long historical period of effort and physical experimentation. This was a time when humans were grappling with how to extend their biological memory, using tools beyond their own minds. Through cognitive archaeology, we see clearly, the path to writing wasn't a sudden spark. It was a gradual, cumulative process. Tens of thousands of years before the first wedge-shaped marks were pressed into Mesopotamian clay, prehistoric groups were already experimenting. They tirelessly sought ways to transform a simple scratch, something seemingly meaningless, into a tool carrying vital survival information. This transformation was profound. From simply recognizing a prey animal's track in the dirt, to deliberately carving their own marks into bone and rock faces, that was a colossal leap in how they processed information. This period, marked by experimenting with geometric carvings, laid down a strong foundation, both technical and neurological. It prepared the human brain, especially the visual cortex, to store and retrieve data from physical marks. It strengthened our ability to recognize patterns. Once organizing repeated patterns became a deeply ingrained cultural practice, humanity was ready for a far greater, more complex challenge to the mind. Understanding why these ancient marks were made is the crucial key to what comes next. So, the point here isn't to claim that ancient humans had writing. It's to illuminate a crucial era of experimentation, a time when people used lines, dots, and grooves as powerful tools to support memory and recognition. Next, we'll explore how humans took that crucial step further, moving from individual memory marks to building an entire system of language, a system for sharing meaning understood across entire societies.